Spotify versus Apple Music. Everyone argues about which one's better, but here's the truth that nobody says out loud. And trust me, it isn't a pretty one. So I've been a loyal Spotify user for the past 4 years. But as somebody who loves everything Apple, I decided to give Apple Music a go during this past month. And what I ended up finding out isn't at all what I expected. This really isn't about the fancy features or a side-by-side comparison. It's about the day-to-day use and how it feels when you actually go to listen to music every single day. All right, so let's start with Spotify. For some reason, I just felt that Spotify's playlists and recommendations were much better than on Apple Music. For some reason, Spotify just knows exactly what I wanted to hear and when I wanted to hear it. You also have user submitted playlists, which although I didn't think was gonna be that big of a deal, it really was. And for me, Spotify honestly just feels like it's more alive. It has more things going on. Apple Music, on the other hand, feels like the complete opposite. And now touching up on Apple Music, and the honest hard truth is that at least for me, it kind of sucked. I felt that overall the UI was very confusing and messy. You obviously don't have user submitted playlists, so all the playlists you get to see are the ones that Apple makes for you. The so-called new section that Apple offers really isn't tailored in any way, or at least I didn't feel that it was tailored to me. Every time I went in, I just saw a bunch of random songs, playlists, and artists that I didn't ever listen to and don't intend on doing so either. And although this might be a really small thing, I'm definitely nitpicking in this video, but the idea of having a favorites playlist and not being able to take it away, to me just seems annoying. I'm not a person that uses either the liked songs on Spotify or the favorites playlist on Apple Music. I like to have all of my music categorized by different genres. So it was really annoying to have that favorites playlist there when it didn't really have any songs inside of it. And then again, although a small thing, I figured out that every single time you're on FaceTime and you want to put music, the other person is going to be able to see what you're listening to, and you'll also be able to share play it with them, which I guess to some people could be a really good feature if that's something you want. But at least for me, it was just something that was unnecessary. And then you have the radio feature as well, which again, there might be some people that like that, but at least for me, it's just a completely useless feature. Therefore, there's a tab on the Apple Music app that's just useless and that I just never touched. The idea in my head, at least, of the radio back in the day was for you to get in your car and then just turn it on, not have to do anything with it. But if you're already having to pay for an Apple Music subscription to get the radio, there'd be no point in using it if you're still going to have to pay for it. I think instead of doing that, you could just stay in the same application and then just go to your own playlist and then put whatever playlist you want. All right, so now let's take a look at some of the small pros that I did actually find with Apple Music. To be fair to Apple Music, the category that they actually do really win in is the visuals. It's a more visually appealing app in every single way. But in terms of the day-to-day use, that's where it lags behind. The lock screen animations are also so much better than Spotify's. They're just so much more dynamic. The albums move, and it just looks a lot better to have a moving album cover on your lock screen than a still picture like what Spotify offers. Apple Music also has lossless audio, which at first I didn't even think was going to be that big of a deal, because I myself am not really a person that cares too much for the audio quality. But when you are either using headphones or you have it on any type of speaker, you are gonna notice that there's a lot more sound and just background music that adds to the power of the song on Apple Music. I just felt that when switching back to Spotify, the songs were a lot more flat and they were just lacking the richness of the music that Apple Music gave me. Another really cool feature on Apple Music was queue management, which was something I didn't expect to see at all, but it's actually really cool. The fact that you're not only able to put a song at the bottom of the queue, but also at the top is really cool, and I found a lot of use from it. Now, yes, in Spotify, you do have the play next feature, which is pretty much the same thing, but in Spotify, it takes more taps to get there. And while continuing on the visual side of things, the lyrics also look 10 times better. Everything about the design is very Apple, and that means that it's gonna look good in every way. I also really like that Apple Music does have a top 100 per country instead of a top 50. At least for me, the more songs, the better. So I would much prefer to have that top 100 than the top 50. Now, what I didn't like is that when you do enter Spotify, they'll usually recommend you the top 50 of whatever country you're in. But on Apple Music, I had to search there to be able to find it, which means that if it wasn't for me knowing that that playlist existed in Spotify, I probably would have never searched for it and would have never found out about it. So with all that being said, and mentioning some pros and some cons on each app, I still do think that Spotify feels a lot more alive in a sense. For example, under each track, you see a lot more about the artist than just when the song came out. You're able to see any type of merch that they're selling, you're able to see their tour dates, the lyrics, you're able to see who they collaborated with on the song, you get to see their about section. There's just a lot more things that are under the track, which guaranteed there might be a lot of people that don't like that, but at least for me, I do. Like I said, I just feel it makes the app more alive. Sticking on that same point, that goes hand in hand with what I mentioned previously of being able to have the user submitted playlists. Being able to create a playlist and then access it from one of my friends' phones, or even accessing a random playlist that somebody made 3 years ago is something that I really like. It adds a lot more variety to the app, and you're able to find specifically the type of music and playlist that you're looking for. So in terms of the overall hard truth, it's that Apple Music, at least in my opinion, for day-to-day use, just isn't good enough. The UI feels clunky, it feels very hard to get used to, and instead of switching over to Apple Music and being amazed by all of the features and everything they offered, it was the opposite. I switched over and I was really just missing a lot of features from Spotify. So although they have the visuals and the app itself is a lot more aesthetic in every way, I just feel that in the day-to-day, Spotify is much better, and I don't think, at least not at this point, that it's close. I did make a video previously though where I did mention how I do think in a few years Apple Music could be better if Apple do certain things, which I mentioned in that video, but at least for now, they're nowhere near Spotify. So there you go. That's the take that I haven't seen many people give, and usually in every other review video I've seen, they just kind of mention the features, lossless audio versus no lossless audio, etc. So that's my take. Do you agree with me? Do you not? Are you team Apple Music or team Spotify? Let me know in the comments and I'll try to respond as soon as possible. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you did like the video. And well, there's nothing really left to be said, so I'll see you guys in the next one.